Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and today I wanted to talk about refueling and give you a quick tutorial on how the jobs are done so you can either help to facilitate these transactions as a refueler, or if you're in need, how you can refuel from another ship. If we start from the perspective of the refueling hauler, which right now is basically just the Starfarer, you need to fill your tanks before you begin. If you're looking at your HUD, you'll see that you have fuel levels displayed on your ship, and you may think, well, I've got a full tank, so I can help people. But that's not a real good indication of how this is going to work. The Starfarer is refueling your customers from the external tanks, and we don't have HUD indicators to show what their fuel levels are. And by default, or if you haven't filled up your external tanks yet, you're going to need to head to a station to fill up those pods. The way that you do this is by requesting landing if you're not already there. Or if you are, you open the Moby glass and you hit the wrench for ship services. And in the new well-defined interface, you're going to see that you have two options there, refuel quantum and refuel hydrogen. Now, in that screen, you either have two options, auto or manual options to do your refueling. I would recommend doing manual, which will open up a new screen that shows multiple different refueling options. The first is your internal tank, which is what your ship uses to fly. But beyond that, you have 6 pods that you can choose to send fuel to. And those are going to be labeled P1 through P3, or port side, which is the left. And then you have S1 through S3, which is going to be your starboard or your right side. If you want to fill up one of the pods, you grab the slider and you drag it to the right to determine how much fuel gets deposited in there. And on the far right of the screen, you're going to see how much it's going to cost you to fill up to the level that you've set. Once you've done that, for all of the pods that you decide to fill up, you will then click buy on the right side of the screen, and the refueling process will begin. Now, it's important to remember that in order to get to this screen, you chose either hydrogen or quantum. So unless your intention was really to only fill up all 6 pods with one fuel type, you buy the initial amount of fuel that you intend to carry, hit buy, allow that job to finish, then go back into the other fuel type to fill up the pods as you see fit. It's also important to note, especially if you're not used to flying large ships, that refueling does take time. And the bigger the ship, the longer it takes. And in 317, that time feels even longer. A new addition is a HUD indicator that refueling is in progress, do not lift off, and when it disappears, the job is done. It kind of hovers in the top center of the screen. Now, I didn't time it to see how long it took to fill all 6 pods with the 2 different types of fuel, but I would say it was somewhere between 2 and 4 minutes. So now that your ship is laden with fuel, you're ready to get your refueling game on. And at this point, you would think that there would be a beacon to accept, allowing you to know where to meet someone that requires fuel. But at least at the point where this video was made, that beacon does not exist. But once it does, I assume it would be created like any other beacon in the game from the Moby glass, providing a quantum location to the person you're heading to support. In the meantime, you will either want to invite somebody to a party so they can come and help you, or you could use a transportation beacon. Either way, it would help you identify where to go to service this person. Once you're on station, though, and you're ready to accept another ship that can start the process, you're going to need to either have someone on your ship, kind of helping you manage the process, or you're essentially going to be getting out of your pilot seat and heading to the back of the cockpit area on the port side, left side, where you will find a station that allows you to interact with the refueling mechanics of the ship. On this screen, there are 2 options for refining and refueling. Refining isn't in the game yet, so you have kind of a read it out option that doesn't let you select it. So by default, you want to click refueling. Once there, you have several options. The left-hand side of the screen has your options for setting the price of your fuel, so you can determine what the other party will pay you if they agree to it. And we're not really going to talk about market prices here, since we haven't played this long enough to really know how refueling adds value and how that impacts the pricing that you offered. Though a stranded person is probably willing to pay quite a bit more than someone who can reach a station, so you have some flexibility there. That may be a future video, but for now, let's really more focus on the mechanics of this gameplay. I will say that if you just want to keep things simple and hit auto price, it should then set the value to 10% more than what you paid for it, which ensures that you do get a profit off of the transaction. If you don't want to charge somebody, say an org mate that you're helping, you can simply enter the number as 0 and it's free to the receiving party. So you're out money because you purchased it, but they're not having to then pay you anything for that transaction. Mechanically, the person that's getting the fuel needs to be able to sync up with you to connect to your fuel boom, which needs to be deployed in order for you to be able to facilitate that. On the bottom of the screen, you're going to see a deploy boom option, which will extend a refueling arm out of the rear of the ship to get them the ability to dock to it. Once they've docked, they will have the option to refuel from you. And it's worth noting that the docking request behaves much like on the Connies, when you need to hit the left bracket to accept their docking request, and then the connection can actually happen. Now, once they've requested the job and they're docked, you still have to do work at the station, though you will see the type of ship and the pilot on the HUD to give you awareness of the transaction that's at hand. If things ever do go sour, you can always hit abort, which will cancel the job, and it will retract your fuel boom, which can apply if you start being attacked by a third party and you just feel a need to save yourself and get out of there. The way the money works in the refueling game is that once you set a price and your customer accepts it, the funds end up being held in an escrow until things are completed. So if you agree to fill them up to X amount and they do abort, or you do for whatever reason, that transaction is halted, and let's say they only received 50% of what you agreed upon, the funds that were held are released for the unused portion, meaning that the refueler is going to get half of what was agreed upon, but they only gave up half of the fuel they said that they would give. Now, how this pans out long term is a big TBD, but from a common sense tier 0 implementation, it's a great start to protect both parties, aside from maybe travel time on the refueler to get to an unreliable party. But getting back to the jobs that need to be done, you're now needing to allow fuel to flow to that receiving ship. And the best practice here is to go into the pod management option at the bottom of the screen, where you can control all of the flow from your ship. In here, you'll see the amount of fuel per pod, along with the fuel type, and be able to control what state the pods are in. You could technically open or close the pods from the screens that are by the pods on the catwalk. However, that doesn't really make sense to have to wander around when you can just go start to finish on the bridge. So maybe there's efficiencies there if you have additional parties that can observe things that are going on from outside of the ship, but right now it doesn't make a lot of sense. You will see a connectivity diagram here that you can control to either open the flow of the pod or close them, and you can do this for multiple different fuel types and the pod locations to determine things like speed. I'm certain that there is an art to this, because the more pods you open, the greater the flow and the faster the speed, but you can also control the flow rate, which is being done through the nozzle. So my intuition tells me that there's a sweet spot of opening multiple pods and finding the optimal zone on the flow rate of the ship in general to get the best refueling speeds. I don't know what those are yet, but we will figure it out in time. Regardless, the artwork that's there, the next step is to click the nozzle button on the right side of the screen to allow the flow to begin. You've controlled everything leading up to it, but you need to open the nozzle to allow fuel to enter the other ship. Grab that slider for the flow rate, take note of the status of integrity, and speed things up by increasing the flow rate, or drag the slider back if you're getting feedback that the flow rate is too fast. From an overall management of this exchange process, keep an eye on the bottom right of the screen, which is where you're going to see how much they need, and when you see that they're full, you should close your nozzle, switch fuel types to attend to that other need. As you play with that flow rate, you will see the estimated time to complete the change, or to kind of complete whatever that needs to get done. That number will change, and your connection integrity varies depending on the inputs. Once all is said and done, you're going to get a big green completed where you previously saw fuel levels and estimates, and then it's time to close your pods and the job is done. If you charge your receiver, the escrow should clear. You'll get a HUD pop-up that shows the funds that you've earned, and at that point, congratulations, you've officially made money trading fuel. But I would encourage you to reset everything closed on your pods, and that make sure that nozzle is closed along with the boom retracted to keep you safe and make sure that you're ready for that next transaction. Now that you've learned how to refuel someone else, let's look at the flip side of that equation, which is how you dock up and get fuel to the ship that you're in that needs it. This part's actually a lot faster and a lot easier just from a personnel perspective, which really starts with targeting the refueling ship, which is a press of the T key by default. And then if you hit N, which is your landing key, it's going to send a docking request to the owner of the Starfarer, which then can be accepted or denied. If they accept and that boom is extended, you can either try to manually dock using the on-screen indicators, or honestly, the easy way is just to hold in and do an automatic dock, which is just so much easier and removes a lot of complications. Once you've docked up, it's time to request refueling, which is done via the mobiGlas repair screen. You hit F1, hit the wrench icon, and there you can either select the auto, which will basically fill your tanks to the max, or you can use the sliders to take on just a little bit at a time. There will be prices shown, so you know what you're going to be paying. Once you've submitted what you want, that request will go to the refueling operator, who will accept or deny, and then begin servicing the job. I think it's easy to assume that you want to just fill up to the max, but it's probably important to think through a few details here. Specifically, kind of the reminder that refueling takes time, and the more that you need, the longer it'll take, and depending on where you're at, that could be dangerous. So sometimes you may want to just get a little bit to be able to get you to the station to finish the job, but you're kind of well protected knowing that the funds are in escrow. So even if you agree to a full tank and you get interrupted by a pirate, you can disconnect and just pay for what you fueled up with, and then you'll be on your way and the funds just true up on the back end. Regardless, if you're interrupting the process or get filled up, once you're done, you just hit N again to undock and you can be on your way. The other item that I really wanted to discuss was just telling you really briefly that there's a few upgrades that are available for Starfarers in the game right now, specifically in the form of 2 new tank types and a few nozzle options. There is a faster flowing tank with less capacity, a larger tank with slower flow, and a few different nozzles that impact flow rate. I don't think we really know enough yet on the right formulas and how they impact flow rate and control and speed and efficiency. So the point in mentioning this is really just to let you know that you can shop, experiment, and maybe find out what works best for you in balancing efficiency and profits. In the Stanton system, I don't think you really need to mess with it much, but in bigger systems, having bigger tanks may be more important, or in more dangerous areas, having a faster flow rate may mean that people can get out of being kind of stagnated faster. So aside from that, that's basically refueling overall. If you have questions about what this experience is like, please let me know. Otherwise, please consider supporting the channel via Patreon or YouTube memberships. Stay tuned for a lot more coming your way very soon. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and take care.